Good morning. This is Dr. David A. Paget. Uh, this is World Regional Geography, Section 98A, uh, Spring 2021 semester. Today is April the 5th, 2021. I am going to share my screen, and I'm going to go to Student View. Okay, so just a little housekeeping. Just be aware that Article Review 6 is due later on tonight. Keep working on those. Keep turning them in. You have plenty of examples of how to do them correctly. If we have time today or on Wednesday, we'll take a look at some more examples of how to do the article reviews so that you will have proper guidance. Then, of course, Article Review 7 is due on 12th. Let's just be aware of that. And I will be talking about the 2 assignments due this week. Okay, I'm going to. So we're going to look first at the calendar again. So I just discussed the article reviews that are due, and so we also have 2 writing assignments. Don't panic. Some people do 1 assignment, others will do the other assignment. And since I'm on the topic, I might as well just keep where I am and keep moving forward. The first assignment, the writing assignment 4, Women in Water. See, I am in student mode. So if I click on the Women in Water assignment, notice that only non-pre-service teachers are to complete this assignment this week. So this assignment is only if you are not planning a career in teaching. Okay, if you have indicated to me or at some other time in this course that you're planning a career in teaching, do not do this assignment. So this assignment is pretty straightforward. It focuses upon the issues faced by women in water in the developing world. In this case, the focus will be upon Trinidad, which is in the West Indies, which is one of the countries that we are studying in this unit C. So you will open up the writing assignment, and essentially what you will be doing is building you'll be using Google Earth, and it's not really a hardcore GIS assignment. It just gets you into another platform, and that's Google Earth, which isn't really a true geographic information systems platform, but it does have some utility, especially if you are trying to communicate some very complex issues in a very simple way. So again, this is only for those of you who are not planning a career in teaching. You'll look at some of the challenges faced in with getting water. We already talked about that a little bit earlier in the semester, really last week. We discussed some of the challenges that people in other parts of the world have in general just getting water. And in this case, we're looking specifically how that merges with the gender equality issue. And so in many parts of the world, women are the keepers of water. It's a very important responsibility because obviously we human beings cannot survive without water. And so women are explicitly and directly connected to water in many cultures throughout the world. So the reading materials are attached to the Dropbox, as is this Google Earth file. Follow the instructions. You will get to a point where you'll have to open up Google Earth and pull the KML file or KMZ file into the Google Earth platform, and then open it up, and then you will follow these instructions in order to answer the questions related to the assignment. So first, you'll describe in detail. You'll have, after reading the articles, first you'll describe in detail at least 3 water quality or scarcity issues faced by women inhabitants of Trinidad based upon the data that you get from these, from the map that you will build. It's pretty straightforward. You'll just do some reading. There's lots of point symbols that you can click on. And so paste screen captures taken from the map to support your answers. And so also in okay, so again, we are going to go to student view. And here is the writing assignment 4. Just had to make one small adjustment. Okay, so here we are. Again, just follow the instructions. Again, this is for people who are not planning on being teachers. And so just follow the instructions. If you have any questions, please ask. Notice in your essays, you must include at least 3 references to the textbook and or to the lecture recordings covering the physical geography of Latin America and the Caribbean. And that's for each section of the essay. And then, of course, the hydrologic cycle. Now, for the hydrologic cycle, you might have to do some research, although there might be some reference to the hydrologic cycle in the textbook. But first, be sure you know what the hydrologic cycle is prior to delving into determining whether or how any of what you've read is related to the hydrologic cycle. Then you have the next part of the assignment is kind of a expository assignment when you just, what did you find most interesting, most challenging? Do not say, no, I didn't find anything interesting or challenging. I learned nothing. That won't get you the grade you want. Okay. So again, the writing assignment 4, Women in Water, is assigned to non-pre-service teachers. Okay, so if you are a pre-service teacher, if you are planning a career in teaching, you will do the other assignment, which is the GLOBE assignment. So if you remember, early in the semester, I mentioned that those of you who are planning careers in teaching, and have not already done so, you should complete the Globe Atmosphere Protocol Certification e-training, and this is part 1. You'll do part 2 next week. Well, you'll do part 2 in a couple of weeks. And then the last 2 parts will be your final exam assignment. And then you will hopefully be a certified Globe teacher. If you have any questions about that, for example, if you've already done this in some other class, we're starting to do it in the methods class with Dr. Dr. Erlika Nelson. If you let me know if that's you, we'll give you something else to do in its place. Or Newsom, or Dr. Newsom, I'm sorry. So just again, follow the instructions. This assignment is primarily to familiarize you with the GLOBE program. Again, the Global Learning and Observation to Benefit the Environment program is a NASA-funded program that has as its primary mission improving science teaching at the K through 12 level. I am a GLOBE trainer. I train teachers how to teach various aspects of physical science, specifically atmospheric science and climate science in this case. And so I train teachers who are teaching and who are matriculating through the College of Education or whatever route he or she takes to become a teacher. And so I've been a GLOBE trainer for 20 years. And what happens is you pre-service or in-service teachers go through this training process. And at the end, you become a certified GLOBE teacher so that when you leave here, you can go and participate in GLOBE, whether it's at a formal educational institution or even an informal educational institution, such as an after-school program, or summer science camp, or Boys and Girls Club, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whatever organization you are affiliated with, if they are involved in the practice of teaching science in some way, shape, or form, then you can serve as a GLOBE teacher at that institution. But the first step is to become certified, and this is the first part of that. So just go through the GLOBE website. The first thing you need to do is sign up as not as a GLOBE teacher, but create a GLOBE account. It's pretty straightforward. But what's very important is that when you're asked as a teacher, not a pre-service teacher, do not create a pre-service teacher account, create a teacher account. And when you're asked to affiliate your account with a school or partner, make sure that is Tennessee State University. If you have any confusion at this step in the process, just stop and get in touch with me. Don't guess and go forward, or you're going to mess up your account. Okay, you don't want to have an account that's inaccurate right out of the gate. You'll get a screenshot of your account confirmation page. Just paste it right here. Then you'll write a detailed essay including all of the following. You can include some graphics, some screen captures, not have it be all text, and then upload this entire document to the Dropbox. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Again, only those preparing for careers in teaching have to do this assignment. Now, I know someone's going to ask, oh, well, can I do both and get extra credit? You can do both assignments. You're only going to get credit for one. I'll make a note of the fact, perhaps, that you did both in my class participation portal, but that's it. So that's the answer to that question. Okay, so those are the assignments that are due for this week. And we're now going to jump into the lecture material or the reading assignment for this week. And so the reading assignment for this week is okay, the reading assignment for this week is Latin America economic geography. So we're going to jump right into that right now. So we've been spending a lot of time with this world population data sheet, and it is has a wealth of information about the various economic information and or quality of life from an economic standpoint for every country in the world that's recognized. And so one of the variables that we have not really emphasized, we've alluded to, is the gross national income per capita purchasing power parity indicator, GNI PPP. Now, in simple terms, it basically refers to the level of monetary wealth or the level of monetary wealth for countries in the world measured in dollars. Okay, measured in dollars. So, as you can see, the average nation's GNI PPP per capita is just under $17,000. So here, that's for the whole world. That's on average. So let's look at the breakdowns here. So this table has countries categorized from more developed, and those countries average around $46,188 per person. Less developed is around $10,000 per year per person. Least developed is $2,923 per person per year. Now, in the textbook, you'll notice that they have 5 categories. Here, there are only 3. But basically, if we look at the comparative assessment, we are pretty much we can pretty much assume where the United States falls. So here's the United States, again, around $63,780 per person. So that's where we are. If you look at Latin America and the Caribbean, their average is about $16,000. So significantly less wealth than we have. On average, there's about a quarter of the wealth held by these countries. So you can immediately see the disparity in wealth from the United States to other countries in the world. So if you remember, the second tier was around $10,000 on average, and that's where a lot of countries in the world are. So let's look down the list. In Central America, there's a pretty wide disparity from Honduras, which is at only 5,350 dollars per person. Then you have Panama, that's at 29,340, but of course they have the Panama Canal. And you can see that some countries, such as the Bahamas, probably due to proximity to the United States and tourism. Trinidad and Tobago has 26,050 cents per person. Their economy is bolstered by oil and gas. Let's see, we have Mexico is $19,870 per person, just to give you just an idea of where that nation falls. So a pretty wide range of wealth is present in these countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. And so why, to some degree, do we have these wealth disparities globally? Why are some countries much wealthier than others? Well, you've probably, if you remember back when we were looking at the four economic sectors, we had the primary sector, which is agriculture, the secondary sector, which is manufacturing. The primary sector is not just agriculture; it includes extraction of natural resources from the earth, farming, fishing, mining, logging, those types of activities. And if you remember, if we go back to the textbook, if we will, since we are discussing the economic geography of this region, if we go back and look at the economic geography of the region, we'll find that, we should go back to, sorry about that. Actually, we should go back to chapter 2. And chapter 2, actually, we should go to page 56. And again, a lot of the data that I've mentioned are here at page 54 and 56, economic geography. You can see a map showing the relative wealth of countries on Earth. And notice that in the textbook, the categories are broken down into quintiles. And you can see, obviously, the United States is at the top quintile. And then, of course, you do have countries such as Argentina there in the top tier. But then the rest of the countries are in those lower tiers. But in Latin America and the Caribbean, for the most part, the countries are in either the middle or mid-range higher tiers, or upper middle class, excuse me. But we can also look at this graphic showing where the world's gross national income power purchasing parity are situated. We can also look at, in chapter 2, chapter 2, sorry. So irritating. Anyway, let's just go back to page 56 here. But before we go to page 56, I wanted to us to take a look at this. This is a very interesting figure 2.27. And so just want to see in relative terms what people own in other countries of the world versus where we are. So here's the United States, 814 cars for every 1,000 persons. Cell phones, almost everybody has a cell phone. Almost everybody has a computer, and so on and so forth. But if we go to chapter 11, Latin America and the Caribbean, and we take a look at that same image focused upon Latin America and the Caribbean only, what we'll find is that, so for instance, let's look at Mexico. Now, if you remember, we had almost 900 cars for every 1,000 people in the United States. In Mexico, which is a, relatively, Mexico's not a poor country. They have revenues from oil and gas and mostly petroleum from the Gulf of Mexico, and yet and still far less automobile ownership. Um, and this number here, well, this is from 2006, but this number here represents how many people have access to clean drinking water. And you can see that that number is comparable to the United States, but how often do they have access? I mean, having access is one thing. How often do they have access? I think we illustrated that earlier. Interestingly enough, the mobile phones have really been a game changer globally in terms of communication. Because mobile phones, notice landline phones, very few people have landline phones in other parts of the world. That is because landline phones require infrastructure, wires, cables, so on and so forth. But a cellular phone infrastructure doesn't require all that. And so those mobile phones have penetrated almost everywhere in the world. Even some of the poorest countries are highly penetrated by mobile phones. But look at computers. Very few people own computers. And again, the motor vehicle ownership is not even close to comparable to those of us in the United States. You can kind of see that. So this is a measure of wealth using consumer goods. What do people own by and large compared with um, the United States? And you can start to see some of the disparities. But let's go back to page 56 and look at the economic sectors. So this is just a review of the economic sectors. But one thing that we have learned from the primary sector is that many materially poor countries are poor because their economies and a lot of most of their citizens focus heavily on the primary sector. Let's look at one of the countries that is on the lower end of the scale. Let's look at Honduras. And we're going to go to the CIA World Factbook to do that. And oops, CIA World Factbook. And we're going to go to countries, Honduras, and let's look at the economy of Honduras in terms of its, so notice a high percentage of the gross domestic product is in agriculture, but the critical number is in terms of the labor force. So notice this is making reference to the people, the human capital in the country of Honduras. Notice that 39%, almost 40% of that country's population is engaged in agriculture. Again, we know that those primary sector economic activities do not tend to build wealth. And so 39% of the population in agriculture is somewhat of a tenuous position. One bad season in terms of climate could put people immediately out of work. I mean, agriculture is completely dependent almost upon the climate. And we have very little control. We, meaning human beings, have very little control to no control over the climate. And so that variable, climate being so unpredictable and uncontrollable by humans, puts any country that depends heavily upon agriculture in kind of a tenuous position. If you're wondering, if we compare that figure to the United States, let's say, let's economy. So again, most of our economy is in the service sector. As you can see, 80% in the service sector. Uh, Remember, Honduras had 14% of its gross domestic product in agriculture. We have less than 1%. And so if you look at labor force, very few people are employed in agriculture, farming, fishing, and those types of occupations. Very few. Whereas most people are either in some form of the tertiary sector. So you have mostly in the services, and of course we have manufacturing and many other sectors in our very diversified economy here in the United States. So the fact that a lot of countries in Latin America and the Caribbean are dependent upon primary sector activities explains why there is a disparity. Now, there have been efforts, or there are efforts to change this, or change the status of a lot of these countries. And so let's look at one of the efforts to change from a predominantly agricultural economy to a predominantly manufacturing economy. So one of the oldest efforts is called the Maquiladora program. And so the Maquiladora program essentially is comprised of manufacturing facilities that are in Mexico, but are owned by people outside of Mexico, largely the United States. So in simple terms, let me go back and take a more a graphic view. So here is the that's the ownership. Okay, so here is a nice graphic depicting the Mexico Maquiladora program. And as you can see, most of the factories are right along the U.S.-Mexico border. And so, but again, if you look at the ownership, these are primarily foreign-owned entities. So, for example, a lot of manufacturing companies like Whirlpool, for instance, and other manufacturers have over the years moved their manufacturing facilities to Mexico. And let's just show that. I can just type manufacturing jobs move to Mexico. And if I type that, and you can see here's an example, Carrier, air conditioning company, plan to move its jobs for its company or from Indianapolis, Indiana to Mexico, expected to result in a loss of 1,400 jobs in Indianapolis. And you can see why are manufacturing companies moving to Mexico. General Motors leads in shipping jobs to Mexico. That's from 2020 Forbes. These three U.S. companies move jobs to Mexico, and so on and so forth. So this has been a trend. So why is it? Why are U.S. companies moving to Mexico? Well, it's simple. Two reasons. Well, A, money, and specifically labor costs. When you or if you ever own a business, you will find that your greatest expense will be for labor, people. And in the United States, people who work in factories went through a period earlier in the 20th century during the dawn of the Industrial Revolution where factory workers were largely exploited, made to work in very dangerous conditions, just a very long and sordid history that was really changed through the advent largely of labor unions and changes in federal law to protect workers from a variety of ways. But some of those, I guess, amenities that have been afforded to the American worker, such as limits on how long a person could be made to work before receiving overtime. So there was a period of time when you went home when the boss told you went home. There was no 7.5 hour day, 37.5 hour week in place. There were no benefits. Now, if you get into a career, into a job, you as an American worker are concerned about benefits, health care, dental plan, vision plan, paid vacation, maternity leave, paternity leave. Yes, there is such a thing as paternity leave. Man's wife has a baby, he might be able to get off work with pay for 6 months. Child care. A lot of our businesses now offer in and on-site child care so that people don't have to, so people can be productive. Your child is right there in the building. You don't have to leave to pick up your child from work, from daycare, and so on and so forth. So all of these amenities that are afforded to the American worker are expensive. And then, of course, we have some states have a minimum wage of $15 per hour, not all states. And so all of these I don't want to call it privileges, but all these protections that are afforded to the American worker can be expensive to the employer. So when Mexico and other countries open up their doors to manufacturers and say, oh, you can build your factory in Mexico, carrier, and you can pay people $5 a day, $10 a day, benefits, so it's a lot cheaper for these manufacturers to operate in places such as Mexico. Now, the problem, as I showed you earlier in the course, well, there's two problems, or I don't want to say problems. Let me just go back to causal factors. Cheap labor was one causal factor. What's the other one? Well, those of us who are consumers in the United States, we enjoy low prices. We don't want to pay $5,000 for a washing machine if it was made here in the United States. If a plant moves to Mexico, builds that same washing machine in Mexico, now it costs $400 or $500, right? So the Maquiladora program was just one effort to stimulate the economy of Mexico moving it into the secondary sector, away from the primary sector, as we mentioned earlier. And so they're just showing another graphic, just showing how many Mexicans are employed in these factories along the border and in other places. So this is a major initiative that has been in place for almost 50 years, the Maquiladora program in Mexico. Also, there is or was the North American Free Trade Agreement, otherwise known as NAFTA. Oops, I'm gonna have to fix that link. Under the Trump administration, the NAFTA was replaced with the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement. And so I still need to, you still need to start with NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. And so what the North American Free Trade Agreement was or is, and this is all in flux right now. Essentially, NAFTA made it easier. And so I think NAFTA is referred to in your textbook here. The section on NAFTA is actually in chapter 12, oddly enough. But let's just go there. North American Free Trade Agreement. Still loading.
You pay attention to the time.
Sorry about this. Get this. All right, let me get this out of here. Okay, so we search in the textbook for the North American Free Trade Agreement. It's an agreement, or was, or is, it's in flux amongst the United States, Canada, and Mexico, obviously to improve trade amongst the three countries. Now, one of the things that NAFTA does is it makes it easier for companies to import goods into the United States. It takes away the taxes. So what would normally happen is if a country from outside the United States tried to sell a product that was also made in the United States, like washing machines, televisions, air conditioners, or what have you, the United States would levy a heavy tax upon that good before it entered the United States. And then therefore the product would not be much cheaper, or even it might be more expensive than the US made product. So that essentially what existed prior to NAFTA through tariffs, which in some cases tariffs still exist, is essentially a way to protect American jobs. Because if we had to compete dollar for dollar against cheaper products with no tariff. So let's say if a washing machine made in the United States cost $2,000 and that exact same quality washing machine was made in Mexico and it cost $500, 99% of people, I don't care how patriotic they are, would buy that Mexican-made washing machine. And after a while, if there are no sales of US-made washing machines, then of course you can easily see the United States manufacturer going out of business. So in order to maintain competitiveness, uh, a heavy tax ordinarily would be levied upon the Mexican-made product. But NAFTA takes that tax away, keeps foreign good costs low, and some would argue led directly to the decline in manufacturing jobs in the United States, which is true. So it is true that there was a decline in manufacturing jobs in the United States. However, the increased consumer availability of these products and the increased affordability of products resulted in higher sales, which means that other sectors of the economy had an increase in jobs, say sales. So if there are more washing machines being sold, you need more salespersons, more accountants, more marketing directors to advertise the washing machines. The transportation, the washing machines need to be transported. So there are more jobs in the transportation sector, which essentially is the tertiary sector to a large degree. So there were many, many, many more um, jobs created than lost through NAFTA. The problem is if you happen to be one of those individuals that had a manufacturing job and you lost it, it was very difficult, or it would be very difficult to transfer your skills to some other sector. It would be very difficult for a person who worked in a washing machine or air conditioning manufacturing facility to suddenly pivot into sales or into marketing or even into transit, you know. So um, NAFTA, of course, under the last presidential administration was attempted to be changed. Um, I showed you an article about that. But in any case, the main point is that um, NAFTA is yet another effort um, to transform the economies of these lower income countries, specifically Mexico, into a higher earnings status. Um, let's look at another really good example of the change away from the primary economy to secondary and other economic sectors, and that's Costa Rica. So here's Costa Rica. And the name of this article is A Silicon Republic. And this is a play on words. If you read the textbook, there's a term banana republic. Um, and so banana republic refers to a country that is dependent on one or two export crops, such as bananas or such as pineapples, right? So in many of these countries, they were almost entirely dependent on this one export crop: bananas, pineapples, what have you, sugarcane. And again, one bad climate event or one bad weather event, a hurricane could wipe out an entire crop of bananas or pineapples. And that would be devastating economically, of course. So that is why countries are such as Costa Rica, were trying to shift away from being a banana republic to a silicon republic. So Costa Rica attracted Intel, which is the world's largest manufacturer of silicon processors, to begin to train its people and transform its economy. And you can just see from this article how great of an increase in GDP when this country switched in 1986, being 88% in agriculture, typical banana republic, to 69% industry within a relatively short period of a little over 10 years. And so um, that strategy, moving away from agriculture towards manufacturing, has bolstered the economy of um, Costa Rica. And so if you notice that Costa Rica, compared to its neighbors in Central America, has a relatively higher um, GNI PPP of 18,670, kind of rivaling Mexico. But compared to other Central American countries that are in a similar status, and in Panama, because of the canal, can't really, you know, it has its own unique juxtaposition with the canal. But if you notice, um, Costa Rica, I mentioned here earlier, not only enjoys higher status in terms of finance, but also if you look at life expectancy, Costa Rica's life expectancy is on par with that of the United States. Just 1 year, actually, they have a higher life expectancy, than the United States. And so this gets us into another term, because as you can see, even with the United States having more than 3 times the relative wealth of Costa Rica, people in Costa Rica still live longer. If we compare the infant mortality rates of Costa Rica versus the United States, now Costa Rica's is higher in terms of at 8.3 per thousand, but compared with other countries in Central America, even Panama, its infant mortality rate is lower even in Mexico, not quite as low as the United States at 5.7 per thousand, but close, relatively close. So when we look at wealth, sometimes we have to go beyond looking strictly at money per se. And so there's another term that we'll have to familiarize ourselves with, known as the HDI, or Human Development Index. And so the Human Development Index is a more holistic measure of human well-being that incorporates life expectancy, educational attainment, health, as well as income. And so Costa Rica is listed as a country that, with whatever wealth that country has, they invest heavily in education and in health. Costa Rica does not have a military. So imagine that. They don't have a military. So they don't have, let's look at the portion of, let's see, U.S. budget military percentage. So if we look at, if we look at the United States, 54% of course, this is an immediate um, aftermath of the Trump administration, but 54% of our country's budget is spent in some way and shape and form on the military. Not education, not housing, not infrastructure, not a lot of things that we could use goes to the military. Um, and so that should cause some form of alarm when we start to think about where our money goes. And but other countries such as Costa Rica spend heavily in education, healthcare, so their quality of life, in relative terms, is good compared to wealthier countries such as Saudi Arabia. So a lot of countries like Saudi Arabia and maybe Kuwait certainly have a lot of wealth. We go back to let's look at, if I can find Kuwait here very quickly. Okay, so here's Kuwait's, come on, for the GNI PPP for Kuwait. This table is not easy to navigate. Okay, so Kuwait has a GNI PPP of $59,760 per person, almost on par with the United States. But their Human Development Index is not high because, as it shows here, they don't invest in school, they don't invest in healthcare like other places that have higher quality of life, such as Costa Rica. So the HDI is another way that we measure wealth. That includes life expectancy, educational attainment, and health. Let's look at another country in Latin America, and of course that is, let's look at Cuba. So Cuba has a life expectancy that is, again, equal to the United States of America. Cuba's infant mortality rate is actually lower than that of the United States. So United States infant mortality rate is 5.7. Cuba is four children dying in infancy out of 1,000 per 1,000. So Cuba actually has better outcomes for its infant mortality, and it's supported in the data and by other sources. So again, it raises a question: how can a country that only has about a $12,000 GNI PPP per person, 5 times, only 1/5 of our wealth, but yet babies are less likely to die, and so on and so forth? So that pretty much wraps up today's lecture on economic geography of Latin America. And I'll have to fix a couple of links in there, obviously. But again, just to wrap things up, be sure to finish article review 6 before 11:30 p.m. tonight. And of course, there's a 12-hour grace period. You have some of you all who are not planning on being teachers have writing assignment 4, Women in Water. And the rest of you who are planning careers in teaching will do the Globe assignment, Introduction to Globe essay, which is the first part of your certification process as a Globe teacher. Okay, does anyone have any questions at this time? Okay, I will close things out. You all have a good day. See you all on Wednesday.